Thursday marks World Earth Day, and to mark it, some 40 top global political figures, including China's President Xi Jinping, plan to attend U.S. President Biden's virtual leaders summit on climate. And for more on this, let's cross live to Kate Fisher in Washington, D.C. Kate, hello there. What can we expect from this high-profile event?
Well, this is President Joe Biden's first chance to try to reassert the US on the world stage when it comes to climate change, after his predecessor Donald Trump did the opposite and did things like withdrawing America from the Paris Climate Accord. He's going to try to galvanize international momentum and show that the US is back. And to do that, we're expecting him to pledge make a new pledge in terms of carbon emission reductions for the US. We don't know the exact figure, but best guesses are about a 50% target, which is double the commitment that the US had made previously. He's hoping that that level of commitment will inspire other countries to follow. He's going to ask the countries involved. There's going to be 40 world leaders to, after his inaugural comments, break out into smaller sessions on things like climate financing and how countries who are particularly vulnerable to climate change can help themselves. And after those, he's going to expect and hope that some of these countries are going to follow suit and also make these significant new pledges. Another interesting thing that we can look out for is that this is the first time that Joe Biden is going to be sharing a platform with some of his biggest global rivals, Vladimir Putin of Russia, Xi Jinping of China. How is that going to go? He said that he can find common ground and cooperation when it comes to climate change, but will Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin agree to that?
Right, and while Biden is trying to find common ground on climate change, what's his administration's climate policy specifically?
Well, he has made it one of his priorities. He said it was during his presidential campaign, and then once he entered the White House, he put it in his top 4 things that he wanted to achieve as president. He's described it as an existential threat. And he says this summit is the first step that he's taking to prove, not just to a domestic audience here in the US, but to the rest of the world, that America does take this seriously. Its reputation globally has been really shredded by Donald Trump's actions in this sphere. It was once a leader in this challenge, this global challenge, but the last 4 years of the Donald Trump presidency really took the US out of the picture, and Joe Biden now is trying to reassert the US on that global stage and try to make it once again a leader in this fight.
Thank you very much, Kate Fisher, reporting from Washington, D.C. Well, prior to this climate summit, China and the U.S. issued a joint statement on tackling the climate crisis. It was issued after talks in Shanghai between Xie Zhenhua, China's Special Envoy for Climate Change Affairs, and U.S. Climate Envoy John Kerry. Wen Chao tells us more.
China and the United States have reached an agreement on climate despite strained relations. In a joint statement, the two sides say they will work together on the climate crisis, saying it's an urgent global issue. The two nations will work together to strengthen implementation of the Paris Agreement, keeping the global average temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius and further limiting it below 1.5 degrees Celsius. China and the U.S. will take other actions in the short term, including developing respective long-term strategies on net zero greenhouse gas emissions and carbon neutrality, maximizing international investment to support the transition from carbon-intensive fossil fuel to low-carbon and renewable energy in developing countries, and phasing down hydrofluorocarbon production and consumption. Those countries will continue to discuss actions to reduce emissions in various perspectives, like the circular economy and green transportation. The two sides will cooperate to promote a successful climate change conference in Glasgow and a UN Biodiversity Conference in Kunming. This is a busy period for climate talks. At a virtual summit earlier this week, Chinese President Xi Jinping discussed climate change with French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. In September, Xi Jinping told the 75th session of the UN General Assembly that China would step up its transition to low-carbon development and take more vigorous action to achieve a peak in CO2 emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Le Yucheng said achieving these targets is no easy task for a developing country.
Some countries are asking China to fast forward the process. That, I am afraid, is not very realistic. When it comes to climate response, China is at a stage different from that of the US and developed European countries. We are still a primary school student, while the US and other developed countries are already in middle school. So it is against the natural course of development if you ask these two groups of students to graduate at the same time.
关照 CGTN.
Now let's turn to Professor Ho Kin-chang for analysis. He's the director of the Polar Research Institute of Hong Kong. Professor Ho, welcome to Global Watch. Do you have any expectations for China and US to make a breakthrough in climate cooperation after recently released joint statement giving more or less hostility between the two countries, especially US towards China?
Certainly, we expect for a high cooperation after the summit. Yeah, it is because China and US, we are the major entity and stakeholder of carbon emission in the world. The two countries actually spend almost 45% of the overall energy consumption in the world, and so the cooperation is very important. We have very high anticipation on them.
How can we view China's longer-term and short-term climate goals? What are the challenges?
And I think it is very ambitious, and especially about the recent updating of the carbon reduction plan. I think it is really challenging to China, but I think the major thing is technology advance, and I think in that area that China has no problem at all at the moment. And also another important issue is the change of the consumption pattern that has a lot of impact on our environment and carbon emission. And I think if China is able to do these two areas better, I think it is always good. And another way doing is education, especially. And I think public education is especially important because China that comprises overall 1/4 of the overall population of the world.
Thank you very much, Professor Ho from the Polar Research Institute of Hong Kong.